There are three often overlooked secrets to improving leg strength at any age. And I'm not talking about specific exercises. I'm talking about principles that can be applied to just about any leg exercise. I'm Dr. Dave Candy, and in this video, I'll explain what those principles are and then apply them to some of the most common leg strengthening exercises. These principles start before you even start doing your exercise, because starting from the proper stance puts your body in the correct position that you'll have the most strength and most power when you're actually performing the exercise. And that starts from the ground up. You want to set your feet in a position that feels comfortable, but this isn't just a passive setting or placing of your feet down on the ground. You have an arch in your foot, and that arch is supported by muscles. So you want to dome the arches by kind of curling your toes and pulling the ball of your foot towards the heel of your foot. What this does is activate the muscles that give the arch strength and stability to keep it from collapsing. And that becomes more important the heavier you are or the greater amount of weight that you're lifting. So you want to set your feet, dome your arch or tighten your foot muscles, and then unlock your knees just slightly. That brings us to the next tip, which is setting your spine position. You don't want to have your spine too arched when you're doing leg exercises, but you also don't want it too rounded. So after you've set your foot position and unlocked your knees a little bit, you next want to find a neutral spine position. Start out by tilting backwards as much as you can, and then rounding forwards as much as you can, and then finding a neutral position midway between there. This is going to give you the most strength and power because you have your spine in alignment where the bones of your spine are doing the work to maintain any weight that you may be carrying, rather than the muscles having to do the work. The final tip is kicking in your glute muscles. And you use both your gluteus medius and gluteus minimus to turn your hips outwards, as well as your gluteus maximus to extend your hips when you're doing exercises. But when setting up, you want to set your feet, find your spinal neutral position, and then kick your knees out just a little bit. This activates the gluteus medius and gluteus minimus, your hip abductor muscles, and now you're ready to begin. If you're doing a squat, you want to set your feet, set your spine, turn the glutes on, and then focus on keeping your grounding down through your feet. So you want to keep the weight through your feet as you're coming down, keep the knees kicked out, keep your spine in a neutral position. Now you may note that this isn't necessarily a straight up and down position. In fact, if you're sitting your hips back to activate your glutes, your spine is going to round forwards a little bit. So that is okay, but you don't want to have too much arch in your back. You also don't want to get to the bottom position where you're really rounding out your spine or getting what's called a butt wink, where your butt kind of rolls underneath. So find your foot position, dome the arch, spinal neutral, knees turned out, and then sit down in your squat. The more forwards you go towards your toes, the greater quad activation you get. The more backwards you go towards your heels, the more glute activation you get. So depending on where your focus is, there are various versions of the squat, but they all use those same starting principles: feet, spine, glutes. Next, we'll move on to a lunge, which is essentially just a staggered squat. So in the lunge, you want to set your foot position where one foot is forward, one foot is backwards. The leg that's backwards, the farther back you put it, the more that's going to shift the weight towards the heel of this foot and the greater glute exercise it's going to become. But again, you want to activate your arch muscles, dome your arch, and then find a knee over toe position. Next, you're going to find your spinal neutral position, so not too arched, not too rounded, and then kick this knee out just slightly. That'll activate your glutes. To see it from the front, you're going to stagger your foot forwards like that. Set your foot position, dome your arch, roll your spine to find a neutral position, not too arched or not too rounded, and then kick this knee out a little bit, and then you're ready to start progressing down into your lunge. So to see it from the side, set the foot, spinal neutral, knee out, and then go down just as far as you feel comfortable going. Just like the squat, if you use a narrower stance and put your weight more on your toes and bring your knee more forwards, that's going to emphasize your quads more. If you use a wider stance and sit back more on the heel, that's going to put more emphasis on your glutes. But again, the principles are all the same. Finally, for a deadlift, this is another leg strengthening exercise that works primarily on your glutes and hamstrings. Many people see deadlifts as potentially dangerous, but you do deadlifts anytime you pick something up from the floor. Now, the older you get, maybe the lighter your loads get, but it's still a great functional exercise for anyone. So to do a deadlift, you want to set your foot position, and of course the bar is going to be starting down on the floor, or the weight is going to be starting down on the floor. You're going to find your foot position underneath the bar, kick your weight back onto your heels for a deadlift. So rather than having a mid-foot position, you're going to kick your weight back onto the heels. Now you want to find a spinal neutral position. That's really important for this exercise because if you're too rounded, you put yourself at risk for hurting the discs in your lower back. If you're too arched, you jam the joints together in your lower back and activate your back extensor muscles too much and you might strain a muscle. So you want to find your spinal neutral position, not all the way rounded, not all the way arched, but kind of midway between. Then kick the knees outwards like that. That activates your glutes, gluteus medius, gluteus minimus, and your gluteus maximus to some extent, which is important because you're going to be using your glutes to drive forwards with a deadlift. With a deadlift, it's not a back extension. So this really isn't a back exercise. If anything, you should be activating your abdominal muscles along with your glutes and hamstrings to drive your hips underneath of you and then back down. So set the feet, spinal neutral position, knees out, drive the glutes forward, and then lower back down. Drive the glutes forwards and lower back down. So those were the 3 leg strengthening principles. And if I didn't say it enough during the course of the video, it's set your feet, find a spinal neutral position, and then activate your glutes. Now, if you need more tips to help strengthen your legs and improve your mobility, check out our balance and mobility playlist right over here. But before you go, if you found this video helpful, make sure to give it a like and subscribe to our channel so you can get notified of our future videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.